With the price of meat what it is when you get it, if you get it. Ah, good, you got it. Well, if those words mean something to you, then you'll have an understanding of what the new Prime Video series, The Horror of Dolores Roach, is all about. When Dolores Roach is released after an unjust prison sentence, she reunites with an old friend who lets her work as a masseuse. When the promise of her newfound stability is threatened, Dolores is driven to shocking extremes to survive. This is an 8-part first season, and it's a quick binge, with each of the episodes being less than 30 minutes. And like the synopsis said, we follow Dolores, a woman who serves 16-year prison sentence, taking the rap for somebody else. When she gets out, the world has changed for her, and she now has to try and integrate back into society, hoping her old neighborhood will be a welcome refuge. She returns, though, to find it gentrified and all hipstered out, with basically nothing left as she remembered, except for this empanada shop run by a guy that she used to know before she went to prison. Justina Machado stars as Dolores, and she wonderfully captures the massive range of emotion the character has to run through as she tries to reintegrate back into the world. There's disbelief, confusion, anger and frustration, sadness, regret, ferocity, even small bits of joy that we see, and they all flash through her countenance at various times, making for an intriguing and sometimes endearing character. Now, this is a dark comedy, mixed with some horrific premises, but the humor, it isn't driven by jokes or gags, but instead it's precarious and stressful situations that then elicit remarks and responses that are either witty or relatably incredulous, which also then lead to chuckles. Now, the story is quickly told, but it's filled with anxious tension, especially once Dolores begins to encounter difficulties that then lead to unexpected consequences. She reacts at times out of her frustration or even out of a self-preservation mindset, and these then result in circumstances that are prickly. The resolution that's arrived at, it was shocking at first, and then grotesque, but also works in a very dark and twisted way. Now, the story of the premise, it's not necessarily unique, but the presentation is different, and it can be fun. There's growing tension throughout the series as actions compound and lead to further complications. And then because the majority of the characters are unlikable, it becomes difficult to know who we want to succeed. And again, sometimes a character is placed in a situation and the outcome was one born out of necessity or self-preservation. But then other times, some of the actions come about because a character is just genuinely disturbed. I love that the episodes are quick because it helped to move everything along in an efficient manner. I binged it all at once, and for the most part, I was engaged the entire time. There are moments that feel repetitious and then others that begin to feel very predictable, but even within these, there are some moments that provide some unexpected actions. And there are a few actors that have cameos in this, making their inclusion fun to see how they tackle the role and if they play somebody we want to root for or against. There's Cyndi Lauper, Judy Reyes, and Mark Maron, who all have small roles, but ones that are pivotal inclusions within the greater story arc. And Machado is supported by Alejandro Hernandez and Keita Updike to just add characters that are charming and innocent, or exuberant and twisted. And both are very complementary to the story, and they make it much more rich with their presence. Now, at the heart of the story, there are two main arcs. One has to do with Dolores' actions once she's out of prison. The other is her ongoing search for her former boyfriend at the time that she went to prison. And while that doesn't get a lot of traction in story revelations, it's always a present storyline and focus of the character, driving her motivations and influencing her actions. Now, something I appreciate about the series is that while it leaves it open for future seasons, one main arc is resolved, creating satisfaction by not having story elements dangling and unanswered should the show not be renewed for future seasons. This isn't going to be a show that everyone enjoys or is even drawn to. The dark and twisted nature of the story is gross and very off-putting by design, but it's also mixed with heart-wrenching story elements that work to create massive character complexities. Each of the main characters has depth to their backgrounds, and we get to learn about them over the course of the season, giving us chunks of their story a bit at a time where it fits naturally within the narrative. The series is filled with broken and damaged people looking to find their redemption, whether that be through recognition, financial success, emotional independence, or respect. The intricacies are deftly handled and nuanced in their presentation, creating characters we're meant to have visceral reactions to. Overall, The Horror of Dolores Roach is entertaining and engaging, presented in a disturbed and twisted manner. The title character is complex and ferocious, but not without a vulnerability that makes her endearing at times. Short runtimes make for a quick binge, and when that's then mixed with grotesque plot points, the series becomes both stomach-churning and provocative. The repetition and predictability can become a hindrance to the storytelling, but the acting and pacing help to keep the show moving. And while the characters aren't meant to be wholly likable, they can be captivating and intriguing. There's sex, no nudity, a ton of profanity, and a lot of very brutal and gory violence. I give The Horror of Dolores Roach 3.5 out of 5 couches. So what are some dark comedies that you like to watch? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.